Okay, amazing. Hi, everyone. So we're gonna get going because our calendar is tight. We're gonna go through today, as I mentioned, a masterclass that we're gonna go through what's traction and what's fluff. And afterwards, Fabian, who is an alumni from ESCP, he's currently a founder, and he was working at JustEat for quite some time, and he's going to share a little bit of how he created scalable system tested hypothesis. So stay in. And then the third part of the workshop is going to be a risk assessment tool that you're going to analyze how to de-risk your own startup and make a quick action plan about it. And that's it. So yeah, so with no further ado, I'm going to start my presentation. One sec. I'm also not very of a Zoom person. Okay, window. Okay, can you see my screen? Maiva?
Absolutely, and it's beautiful.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so as I mentioned, this presentation is a little bit about what investors actually believe and why you should do the same. And it's a kind of a no bullshit presentation with I'm going to tell some hard truths and might change your view on how you are thinking about building a startup today. But I hope it sheds some light on and doing what's most important as a founder in the very beginning. Is since you have so much to do, is putting on your energy on the stuff that actually makes sense and prioritizing correctly. And what we're saying is this, like how to create real traction. So a lot of you see on social media, everybody's on LinkedIn here, and you see those founders being super successful, doing great stuff and posting all their achievements on LinkedIn, those pitch competitions, those prizes. But newsflash, this is not everything, and this is actually not about being. That's not what it means to be a founder, and to actually have money, to make money doing a business. Because a business is not flashy LinkedIn posts or things that maybe your parents get proud of, but it's making money and or an impact if or sustain your business. But that's really important. So today we're going to go through a few things. So how to distinguish between real traction and vanity metrics, how to apply the ladder of proof frameworks and Povlet's, both from two, look how VCs look at two frameworks on how to de-risk startups and how to evaluate startups, and also how to identify high impact, low cost bootstrapping tactics that you could get more traction for your business, and prioritize actions that convert visibility into action. And hopefully at the end of the day, you're going to have a meaningful action that you could do that could drive traction for your business. So there is a great book that's called Traction. So but first of all, like, what is traction, right? Means getting is what your, let's say it like that, is how your investors always ask you, okay, how is your business moving further? Is your business actually working? Is this becoming I'm going to get more into details, just a teaser, okay? And one thing that really illustrates why you build the concept of traction in your minds is that every single failed startup, they had a product, but What they didn't have was traction. And when we think about why is this so important, is because when we think about why startups fail, we usually think about, okay, people fail because they ran out of money or because they had a bad team. But people usually also ran out of money when they spend money on the wrong things and they don't reach product market fit or profitability while they have their money. And doing that is actually, they're not actually building, they're spending money more, they're actually building value. So if you think in those terms, like building long, so I would put 3 main points that help pre-seed startups fail. Building too long and not talking to users. Founders usually have a very clear vision of what they want to do, and they don't talk to users. And then when they launch, they find out that actually users didn't want what they had in their minds. So if you do talk to people first and why you're building and gather feedback and iterate, you have a bigger chance. Chasing press instead of revenue. That thing that I mentioned in LinkedIn, so many people on LinkedIn thinking that makes sense, and optimizing for pitch decks and not product market fit. I remember that when I was first a startup founder, one person gave me a horrible advice. They said, "Oh, make a pitch deck, it's going to help you organize your thoughts." And I wasted so long in that pitch deck, and I didn't do what was meaningful, actually doing my business. And a lot of people waste time doing that. Please don't. And what traction isn't, and that's the problem. So a lot of people on those posts and everywhere, and we feel that we are progressing, bringing our business further, but we are not. Because that's what you have to understand. Like, press is different than profits. Being a Microsoft for startup doesn't mean anything. They're not our customer. It's just a program. Sorry if you all post about Blue Factory, we're very happy, but that's not what's going to bring you further. It's actually the work you do here. And signups also are different than users. 10,000 signups is very different than 10,000 users, because not all people convert. And if you stop spending, wouldn't growth stop too? So that's super important, because a lot of well-funded startups, they put so much money into it. You saw Gorillas and those guys, and as soon as they start pouring money, things starts going. And awards is different than customers. Signups different than sales. So remember. And I think this guy, Burak Buyudemir, he gives a little correction thing, that when people put, oh, we got 10K waitlist signups, when you say this type of bullshit to not bullshit, of vanity or traction metrics that don't really that don't really mean much, that's the real adjusted value that good VCs and you should think of. 10K waitlist signups means 100 to 200 buyers max, usually. 5 enterprise pilots might mean 1 contract at the end. And 1 million in letters of intent might mean 100K maybe. So, and 1 celebrity investor that might look so cool in your pitch deck on your LinkedIn post, if he brings no strategic value, that might be horrible. So really be careful about all those things that look fancy, but they don't bring your business further. And that's what traction is. So this is what real traction looks like, is actual paying customers. Even 3 is gold. Active users, usage that you did not chase. For example, people, of course, in the beginning, we're going to sell to friends and family and everything. But the moment that you see a random person reaching out, or word of mouth that didn't come to you, that means something. Organic word of mouth, users that you never paid for, where do they come? Try to understand. Monthly recurring revenue and net revenue retentions, customers who return, refer, and repeat. And also, customer acquisition value is something that so many people brag. Oh, we're using so little money to acquire customers, but what actually means a lot more is how the lifetime value of those customers, and if they pay for that customer lifetime value in a multiple that makes sense. Even if you have, oh, I'm being so cheap to acquire users. Okay, if they don't stay, what's the point? And then now I'm going to jump into you. I would like to see what is Fluff or its proof of traction. So number one, you can reply on the chat. And Maeva, I cannot see the answers, if you could tell me what people reply.
Yes, I can.
One, you were on a 30 under 30 list, like Forbes 30 under 30. Very famous people got in there. Proof or Fluff?
We have a Fluff.
Okay, yeah, correct. That doesn't.
It's fraud.
I would say, like, if you're building a consumer startup, a lot of people are going to hear about you. Might be good, but be wary, right? Of like, it takes a lot of effort to do those things. Might open you a lot of doors, but that's more fluff than a proof of your business. Sorry to tell you that. You got 3 unsolicited referrals last week. Fluff or proof?
It's no proof.
Proof, exactly. That's a great one. I talked about it before. Number 3, you won a startup competition. Is Fluff or proof? That's a tough one.
Someone said depends. Someone said Fluff. Someone said proof. Someone said
exactly. It's a very tricky one. I'm sorry to tell everyone, but it's Fluff. When you apply for startup competitions, it's usually, imagine for us to get to the finals, it takes a lot of time applying. You go in there, you're doing your pitch, you're preparing that thing. Okay, you might get 10,000 euros, 20,000 euros, 5. Okay, if you have 0, that might sound a lot, but it's way better for you to spend time and efforts actually building the business. And especially in the very, very beginning, I'm the master. If from my last startup, I raised on this type of mini grants and competitions, so like quite a lot of money, 5K here, 10K there. I lost count of how many of those. And I think was one of the biggest mistakes that I have also done. And I really wish I had used that time to do the business. And at the moment that we started focusing on what really mattered, we actually made money from the business. This becomes irrelevant, 10K, 5K.
Yeah, that maybe I can add some from the comments. So there's someone asking like, still, is it worth doing it? And another one mentioning that sometimes it's better to get clients or investment. And maybe the only thing I can say from the Paris experience is that doing it once at least can push you to, for instance, create a document, like have to put on paper things when you apply. That was the value for some participants to join, but yeah, still. So the question of Yasmin is still, is it worth it? And Nicolo saying, but sometimes, because it's capital letters, but sometimes you might get clients or investments.
I think it's very rare when you get investments. So honestly, you can go and network in these events. I think if you go for one very prestigious things on the right time, but like don't become a pitch competitions bait person. Be very mindful what you're going to choose. See it as one PR thing, and that's it. You might get an investor, you might meet some connections, but you might meet one also in a networking event. So, and by doing your real proper research on potential investors that would invest in your business, not a random person in a pitch competition. Usually also for us that organize that stuff, it's very hard to get the good investors to go because they don't see really value for investments. That's the hard truth. And number 4, yeah. So I know that's controversial, but yeah. You can take it or not. Number 4, you sold a 49 euro service for a stranger. Good or Fluff or proof?
Proof, said Yasmin.
Yes.
And
Okay. So now thinking about how VCs look at traction. So and you might say, okay, but I can really start building my pitch deck right now. I have a great idea, and in reality, people are more picky than we think. So this is how Antler. Maybe I'm zooming in a little bit because I think it was too small.
yeah,
How Antler sees traction. And for them, they say like, okay, if you come from some pedigree, come from ESCP, or they didn't put in here, wrong. And then, or for you did McKinsey before, an Ivy League school, or a key track at Scale Up, or if you have a senior pedigree that you have a key role in early employee on a Scale Up with strong references, you get on the second level. And you're in the third level if you're a very experienced founder that raised from VCs, built startup to a decent size. It's not like you made a tiny startup that barely worked. And if you're a successful founder, means successful, like you brought your company to like 100 million valuation, a successful exits or something like that. Those are the people that raise 5 million on paper. You, with some pedigree, more likely on the 0 to 300K or 0 here, idea on paper. So that's why everybody else in the whole world, you should first aim to get to this line. That's your first product live. That's the minimum that you can have. And that would be 0 for everyone else that has no pedigree. That they would be able to raise with no validation. Most people can only raise something with a product live with medium indications of demand. Already some proof that your product's working. I'm not talking MVP. I'm talking a first version of a product. Okay? And so you can see that what we think that idea on paper is good for everyone, but it's very, very rare. And another VC from the Silicon Valley that I love, it's NFX. They work mostly with network effects, and they see traction and in signaling of your startup progress in like a ladder. And not all the things are necessarily applicable for all startups, but you can see here what is better than less. So a lot of people think that, okay, so for you to understand, paying users is always better than good customer retention, or always better than active users, or than a customer wait list, or your ability to build something, or you have expert advisors, or better than you having a fresh, good idea. So better than paying users is that actually you have a good lifetime value or very low customer acquisition costs. So the more everything you tick on this ladder means things that should aim for. That's real thing that moves the needle for you to create a trustworthy company. Because VCs, so why Antler thinks like that and NFX thinks like that? Because for VCs, they see startups as a bundle of risks. So they think of like, hey, I need to put my money. And we all know from finance that the higher the return, the higher the risk. And that's why when you're very in the beginning of your startup, they are gonna invest a little bit of money and they gotta get a bigger chunk. But if you're like have a lot of proof points and you're very proof, you show that you're working, you have less risk, and then they're gonna take a smaller cut of your startup. And in that reason, the VCs and any type of investors are thinking, okay, how can I reduce the risks of my investments? How do I know that those guys are want to work out? And here's how they think. They think, okay, if they move up this ladder, I have more trust. That's my money. And every single investor is going to ask you to push higher. Oh, I need to see this. I need to see that. That usually means no, I don't care about you. But that also means like, if you want me to change my image about you and your risk, that's what you have to show. And
yeah, there's just a quick question in the chat. Yasmin asking, what do you mean by lifetime value?
So it's a formula. I can share it later, but it's like a customer. For example, if you have a recurrent user in your business, so this person is your continual users, and they don't churn, means that they don't leave your business, they keep on paying. They have a lifetime. So for example, a user that you acquire, you pay 10 euros. This person stays in your company for 10 months. They pay 10 euros per month. They pay 10, and they costed 10. So their lifetime value, I think, is 90. So it's the whole time money that they invest, the time that they stay, minus this. And it's a formula that you calculate how your cohorts and how your users are staying in your companies and how much they're worth. Because in this case, if you have a business, a customer that stays for 1 year, and if you had paid for the acquisition of this user 150, you would be on a loss, for example. So that's how you have to think about user retention. Yeah, clear? Yes. Okay, and then going back to the startups are and the bundles of risk. So I think the high level principles is that showing is better than telling. I'm going to go more into that in detail. And external validation is validation is stronger than your personal opinion, and the more data you put, the better. Leo Povolets, he has a framework that I really like, that divides every startup in those bundles of risks. So they say, okay, the first risk is your product going to work? Do you have a product market fit risk? Is your product going to be good quality? What about the team? Is the team going to break up? Do you guys know each other for a long time? Have you guys worked together? Have you guys built something together? Or you're going to break up and the startup's going to collapse? Recruiting. Are you going to be able to recruit people from your market, from your experience? Do you know even how to recruit people? Sales risk. Can you sell? Will people going to buy this? Market risk. Is this market big enough? It's going to saturate. Funding risk. It's going to be difficult to raise because this market is badly seen by investors right now. There's very few investors that, like back in the day, defense used to be very bad because almost every single venture capital investor had a clause that they could invest in defense startups only if it was dual use, if they could do something in defense, and if they could at the same time be used for something else. But right now, with so much money and a big boom in the defense industry, they changed the rules. So now there's no funding risk if you want to build a defense startup, for example. It's a way lower risk than that. But also there's your ability to fund. Do you know how to fundraise? If you're a girl that fundraised a lot in the past, that lowers your risk, and short and long-term competition risk. And later in the workshop, we're going to try it out. So I'm going to skip this. So in reality, so what attraction actually means is that what investors are looking for is a great people and momentum. And traction is momentum translated, but momentum of reality is not fluff. So it's what you actually brings your business further. It's like real users, product that works, real science. And okay, sorry, Fabio, I'm going to try not to run through you. I'm going to speed up a little bit. So yeah, and bootstrapping is the fastest way to prove So even though we think that we might be able to raise on a pitch deck, always the best advice is to try to bootstrap, try to make revenue first. We know that the moment that we start making revenue, potential investors might say that they want to see more product metrics. Yeah, that's true. But how are you going to know if your business even going to work if you don't try to sell it? You're selling a lie even to you. So I would say always charge even before you build. You can do some smoke testing before. Sell the service before your products, pre-sell, consult in some special cases. And yeah, so you try to make some money before you do it. And here is also from the book Traction that I recommend. So they have a very cool framework. It's from Gabriel Weinberg and Zimermann, this book, that they say that you should select. You have all those potential places that you could get customers, and you should actually choose your top three in your top three in your layer that you're going to focus on, and put other six, and then you focus only on those three, the bullseye, what they call. Never try more than 3 channels at once. You see if they work, and then you move for the next. And then you diligently stop the bad performing, and you keep the good performing. Like, no news on that. That's, I think, the principle of a lot of testing. And yeah, so I'd like you to end. I would like to invite you to make a real plan, what you could do to generate some meaningful, to move the needle and reduce your risks and bring you more closer to good momentum with your startup. So could you sell something this week? Could you pre-sell something maybe? Could you launch a waitlist, or even better, put a Stripe limit, people take some money even if you cannot deliver? Then you can refund, no worries. Charge for consulting related to your product so you could learn from that specific customer. So I'm not pushing people to consult. I can talk about this later. And would love to, at the end of the day, that you would commit for one thing that you're going to do that's going to prove demand on the next 7 days. So that's it.
One question, Livia, in the chat from so it's do you have any good resource to get informed about the viral growth engine strategy? What are the different ways to indeed get referrals, as you mentioned earlier, which are actual proof and not fluff?
Okay, so I love the growth hacking playbook from I can send you that one. So sorry, can you read it? Let me read this the question again.
Yeah, maybe if you read it, it will be clearer.
Yeah. Any good resource to get informed about the viral growth engine? Yeah. So I would think 2 books that I really love. So the growth hacking engine, I forgot his name. It's he's a very famous guy. I forgot. I can post it later. And the other one is
Is it the Lean Startup?
No.
Is it the Lean? Okay.
No. It's growth engine. I'll put both. I'll put both books later for you. Yes. They are, they're awesome. And I think this viral loops, you have there's a whole book on this topic that, I can talk a whole day about this. But basically,
you can look for it during the Fabian.
Yeah, you have to build within your product growth engines and in your product cycle and your usage, so people can refer during it. So
Yeah,
that's important to do this trigger and this response. And the second book is from a professor from Stanford that he did this whole lesson only about those viral loops. And that's a class that Instagram founders actually took before they had the idea from Instagram, and he wrote a whole book about it. So it's really nice. I'll post both at the end. Another essay that I recommend to read is Do the Things That Don't Scale from Paul Graham from Y Combinator, that he really talks about in the beginning, getting your first customers. You should try to do some things that even though they don't scale right now, they help you learn and they help you get these first customers, and they really move the needle. I'll share both at the end. But without further ado, now I will leave the floor to Fabian, and he can introduce yourself. Fabian, would you mind sharing your presentation? I have it here, but
thank you, Livia. Do you mind sharing it? Because I think
I can.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you so much. So good to meet you all. I actually was a bit in your shows a couple of years ago. I was a student at ESCP in the MIM program from 2012 to 2014. And I had a career track of 15 years. I was in the tech industry and in strategy consulting, started at a big company, corporate tech called SAP, where I did a traineeship. Then I was at BCG for a couple of years in strategy consulting to then get more into a scale up. And I was in the world of food delivery with two bigger companies. Although with a lot of M&A, I actually had a lot of changing employers. I started at Delivery Hero in Germany. And then Delivery Hero Germany got acquired from JustEat Takeaway, which grew by M&A bigger and bigger over the years. I did 7 years with them, and I had a couple of roles, both on the strategic end and operational end. And it really taught me a lot about how you scale in different sizes of a marketplace business. And I hope with this presentation, I can give you a bit of transferable skills, actually, because some of the stuff I think we struggled with in bigger organizations, you will absolutely come across in your startup and in your founding. It's also relevant for me because I actually quit the company to found a startup. So I'm currently exploring the ecosystem. Right now, I'm in New York and meeting here some founders and VCs to see what the startup scene is like here. I also have a connection to London because I was really in the MIM program truly international. Not only did I study in Paris, London, and Berlin, I also worked in all of these cities and had jobs there. So I'm trying to actually also see a bit where I want to land in terms of the ecosystem. So is it going to be moonshot like in the US? Is it going to be in the UK, where I have a bit of route still, and I'm currently supporting a venture capital fund there? Or is it going to be in Berlin? And Livia also showed a slide from Entler. I'm actually also supporting Entler at the moment to mentor startups. So I can also give a couple of insights from there when it comes to experimenting. So yeah, happy to have that talk. I brought a few slides, but also I want to focus a bit on Q&A and really get to sort of your questions and see what we can, how we can best make that time useful for you. Thank you. Yeah, so having said that, what we actually did, or what I did in one of my roles at JustEat was city innovation. And to give you a bit of a feeling for the challenge, we were $1 billion company, made lots of revenue and really a very on-scale machine. But we still struggled and we saw some market share declines in cities. So we need to get to the root cause of it. And I think we did pretty well with implementing a certain framework when it comes to hyperlocal playbooks, also the way teams work in squads, and how we did experimentation. So yeah, we actually did need to more or less found a startup within JustEat because we said, okay, we need to be in a position where we can very quickly validate hypothesis. So it was all about thinking what is actually going on with our customers, always put the customer first. And we did a data-driven approach to check on that. So if you go on the next slide, it lays out a bit the approach we took, right? So I would break it down sort of in three bigger blocks. The first one was about creating structure, because the organization was designed in a first of all in a global way. So you have global functions, as in a global sales department, global marketing department, global operations, and then you have countries like the UK. So in the UK, that was replicated, means the UK also had a sales team, a marketing team, an operations team, and so on. The issue we had at that time was actually, how do we get a lens in terms of data for our cities, for our big key cities? And if we talk about a city like London, it's actually the size of a country. Where we got to was actually breaking down, I would say, slicing the elephant, you could really say, and saying, how can we make London as a big city, aka a country, more digestible and look closer towards our problems there. So what we did is we looked at data, and we looked what data we had available, what we also aggregated external data. For example, on the data end, you could really see that we looked a lot on our customers. So we tried to enhance our customer data, and I can really recommend that to you, that you go out there and try to understand your market. When I talk about a market and you as a customer, if you think of food delivery, you have a relevant market that is actually probably 3 or 4 kilometers in your radius wherever you are, right? Because you want the relevant restaurants. So in that sense, a customers in North London doesn't care at all what the offer is and how good the offer is in South London, right? It's all about what do they see at the platform, which restaurants do they see in their sort of selection set. And is it most relevant for them? So what we actually did is we tried to understand neighborhoods better. We did we tried to source consents data. We had actually really rich data sets in the end, understanding what kind of ethnicities are there, what kind of structure is around families, around single households. Is it more of a business area? Is it more of a residential area? And with all of that, we tried to actually tailor the offer more and more. We also did customer interviews. So we would pick specific customers in areas and partners and try to understand better the root cause of what's going on in an area. Because what I can recommend you highly, and it's going to be all of what you're doing, is you need to start thinking of hypothesis, right? You need a hypothesis to say what is going on, what might be possibly wrong, or what might be possibly working better from what we had done before. And how we did that from a team perspective, actually, is we had a bit of a challenge of teams would be in different departments. They're not necessarily working on one thing. So we did a cross-functional team, which we called a squad. And that squad was a bit different from a usual project team because it was really empowered with decision-making. So now I think in your startup scenario, that might be a bit easier, right? Because you might be your own person in the startup, or you might have a co-founder or so, but your decision-making should be within the room. And you should also force yourself to say, okay, we're going to take a decision that is low risk because we're going to experiment. And what we did in that sense is we took a smaller sample set of customers or of an area, and we ran experimentations. And those experimentation, we actually time limited. We would say an experimentation runs for 2 weeks only. We twist a certain variable, like a KPI, and we define a desired outcome. I think that's really one of the big learnings I had with experimentation, because sometimes you get, I would say, too excited to just go ahead and run. It's really important to get disciplined in the sense of like, when does your experiment start? What is your A/B testing look like? So what is your baseline before? And what do you think you're going to get to if you do a certain action, right? So let's say if you do a certain customer promotion, or if you change the ranking algorithm to show different restaurants to customers, what do you expect in terms of an uplift in conversion rate? Which metrics do you first of all expect to change? And what rough impact do you think is needed to have a significant change? Because you want to, in the end, get a bit to a stage gate approach. You want to have a hypothesis, an experiment, and after, let's say, 2 weeks or so, we wanted to decide to say, what are we going to do with our insights, right? We test fast, and we learn fast. But what are we doing with these learnings? So these learnings could imply certain things. For example, are we gonna, was it really successful and we want to scale it? Then we would think about what's the next way to scale. Is it maybe not really successful, but a bit, so like a bit of on a medium scale? We could say maybe we need to pivot. Maybe we had certain insights from our reflection to say, oh, we think we need to twist something, but hopefully we can still have an outcome. Or do we say, do you know what? We all thought it would be a good idea, but the data really showed us it doesn't drive traction, and we don't think we should do other stuff again. And yeah, I think that's sort of the exactly. Yeah. So going to a rhythm approach of a stage gauge experimentation. And we defined, and this is really up to you, right? But I think it's important to define at the beginning, what metrics do you look at to say you have good traction? So in our sense, as I said, we had looked at really impact. Does it move the needle? So can we see something in KPIs? Some that really became our biggest enemy was feasibility. And I think that's a bit your gift in the startups, because you face way lesser complexity. But you also want to think of what can I do to execute smartly, right? And really challenge yourself, because sometimes if you just want to show something in an experiment, you might not need a complete product change, right? Because a product change would maybe get you in a product pipeline. It takes you a couple of months to get a change. And then until you sort of get to your experiment, it takes too long, right? So we really thought of what can we do autonomously to execute fast, prove a point, and if we prove a point successfully, to then bring it back actually to the teams to implement it and scale it in our usual standard operating principles that we had in the organization. So if you go back one slide, and then define your time to signal. I just threw in there 14 days. I think it's quite a common thing for startups to say we want to see traction or a movement within a week or two, right? And it's also important then to say, to have these decisions to say, what do you want to do out of it? And it's fair to drop something to say, okay, that didn't change the needle. We need to look at something else. I think you will have so many decisions in your startup period. And it's really crucial for you to focus on the right ones, not do 100 things at the same time, because it will also screw up your results, but rather to check and define 1 or 2 experiments for a week, go with them, look at the results, and then move on, right? And then be clear upfront when you define your experiments to say, we have maybe 50 experiments in the pipeline. We think those 3 are going to move the needle the most. So that's the experiments we're going to choose to test and learn the next 1 or 2 weeks. And that was important for us because I don't think we were ever short on ideas. I think our challenge was really on the executional part and to triage and say, what do we want to change, right? And as I said, some of the changes we thought were pretty good because they meant a lot, but they would mean incredibly complex product adjustments, which we at that time were just thinking it's not feasible. So we dropped those things. Still, we had a bit in a backlog to say, you could always bucket a bit in terms of what can you do short term, what can you do in the medium term and long term, and those we would park and say, okay, long term we think we want to experiment something, means we need to set up product workshops and stuff, but we will eventually get there, and we will not take that as fast experimentation. So if you go on the next slides, yeah, we had pretty good results in certain areas, and I think one of the proof points for that was really because we narrowed it down, right? So our point was a lot about local innovation, and I can really recommend it to you to break down your market. So we would take a certain area, and you could do that as well, depending on your product, right? But that's just for argument's sake. Say you have a consumer-facing product. You want to define maybe an area. I was just consulting a startup yesterday, which is rolling out medical devices for consumers. And so I was suggesting them actually to pick a target market and define a density where you say a customer who lives in an area, what do they need to see in terms of your marketing, in terms of your out of home, in terms of your different channels that you can do quite hyperlocal, right? And you can do it cost efficient. So we would work a lot, for example, with flyering. It's a really cost efficient piece to hand out flyers, hand out vouchers specifically to people in an area, make them aware of an offer in an area, and then try to drive awareness and traction. We also did different experiments, but what we learned, and also from competition, is getting in that there is a high risk if you want to do too much at the beginning. You might scatter your success too soon. If we saw, for example, competition getting in, let's take the example of Berlin. We had Volt, a competitor coming in. They would be only focusing on Mitte, which is an area in Berlin, or, for example, Kreuzberg at the beginning. And they would get their learning, and they wouldn't get out of those areas, right? For a couple of months, they would really, really learn. And once they had executed their playbooks or their scalable playbooks, they would actually then out of a sudden go in the next area, and they would actually increase their speed of rollout. And that's sort of the approach we did as well, right? So we did look at different areas that had different characteristics, try to learn from them. And once we were on an opportunity to scale, we would roll that out either for the whole region, as in full London, or even for the whole country. But we did that experimentation approach. So that about scaling. If we had really good stuff, actually, we also scaled it across markets, because we did those initiatives also in different markets. And we would say, oh, maybe there was a learning from Italy of a marketing campaign that went pretty well. Or so we would try to exchange with our different city headers, and then we would go ahead and implement that. And we saw an increase in our metrics, right? But that's what I mentioned earlier. I think really it's about making sure your customer satisfaction goes up, which you can look at. But even if you don't have customer satisfaction, our highest proxy was, do we have reoccurring customer, right? Livia talked about customer lifecycle value. So would we actually see an increase of customers to come back more often? That gives us a signal that they like our service and that maybe the service offer has improved. So yeah, I mean, if you go on the next slide. So I think to summarize things a bit, I think what isn't really important for you is defining your market and your micro market. And depending on what product you do, is really get out there, get out by yourself, talk to customers, and get an understanding of what they want, but also understand the ecosystem. So if you partner, maybe in our case, it was restaurants, we equally would talk to restaurants, and we'd also talk to couriers, because, like, there's different data points you actually gather, but they give you a sense of what's going on in your specific market, however you define your market and your customer segment. And as I said, we also enriched those data sets as we could by external data. Some data you can really find online. Maybe you need to get together with a marketing agency or so to get more insights, but be a bit creative how you get to your customer insights. The second one is really go for short learning cycles. Try to be not perfect, because perfection usually kills speed, and that's what brings you down in a startup. But be very clear at the beginning what metrics you want to look to change, because we did sometimes the mistake to just go and run because we were incredibly excited about something. We changed something, but we didn't really have the data on what the baseline looked like. So we couldn't really tell at the end, did it bring an improvement or not? So important for you to actually to be disciplined, set at the start what you want to change, and then look at those KPIs, and maybe also look at other KPIs that you think are adjunct to it. But yeah, go for a few experiments, as I said, don't boil the ocean, and build playbooks. So you need to document as well your learnings. When it's only you in the startup, it's fine, but only also you're going to see so much things. So for you also to document your learning journey and understand, what you learned actually a few months ago and what you thought was true for the customer. Keep documenting it, because even if you have new people joining in your startup, they don't have that baseline, they don't have that knowledge. You're building up so much customer insights or actually advantage, but you need to make sure, if you get partners on board, people joining your startup, freelancers you hire, whatever you do, make sure you provide them with your knowledge and your insights. Yeah, so for us, closing it up, actually, it was really about getting to the discipline and building up a system of how can we scale. Never were we short on ideas, but I think the chaos, and you wouldn't think that of a big organization, but it was like that. It was completely chaotic, no data, no clear approach, people left and right. And I think it's really getting discipline into innovation is equally important, because as exciting as innovation is, but you need to make sure that you go data-driven, hypothesis-driven, and very narrow, because otherwise you will really boil the ocean and you don't really understand what results you get. Yeah, that brings me to the end, and I'd love to open up for any questions or so that you have. Can also be questions, by the way, that are not related to what I just presented, if you have any questions around sort of the background or what I'm doing at the moment. I see a hand up, so I'm just going to call you guys out. But maybe if I don't see anyone, let me know. I see Leon's hand up.
Hello. Hi. Thank you, Fabian, for the presentation. My question is relating to the food delivery business. What is for you the key insight that you saw that was basically the differentiating factor for the client? Was it at the end only a matter of price, or was there actually something else, between Uber Eats, Delivery Hero, etc., that was, the most impactful thing that you learned?
Yeah, that's a really good one, because it's a quite actually comparable product experience, right? So as a customer, we had little loyalty. What we saw as the most critical factor was by far the supply we had on board, so means the partners. And the competitive advantage that actually Uber built up quite early and Deliveroo is that they would sign restaurants exclusively. So if you as a customer go on the platform, you only find your favorite restaurants there. You're going to start ordering there. And often you're going to habitualize and stay and be like, oh, I'm going to put the next order there as well. I would say I would add two more things. So this was the most important thing. The second most was about a good service experience. So in certain times we had issues with drivers and food would take too long or so. Food would be cold. So the customer experience itself wasn't that good. That made lots of people to switch because they feel like at other platforms the service was better. And the third one, which we then caught up with, was really getting something unique for your customers in terms of promotions, certain offers, a unique maybe burger or so, which we did in cooperation with but something that the customer actually perceives as of value. It can be price value that they say, oh, I save money. It can be, specific value that they say, oh, it's a burger that's only on that platform. So that actually we saw as well as a good differentiating factor.
And did you see that the people are mostly ordering like at the same, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3 restaurants, or was there more behavior of people always choosing new type of restaurants for the orders?
I think it really depends on the customer. So what we saw across the line that everyone loves McDonald's. It really made like 30% of our orders, no matter which countries. Ironically,
30%.
also to the French countries, French people, which are actually more known.
It's the second biggest market. Second
Yeah.
biggest McDonald's market in the world is France, actually.
It's crazy because I always thought it's so much about the food culture in France, but they have their guilty pleasures. So McDonald's is everywhere, very present. So that we saw across the line, but otherwise it really depends a bit. We had in general we had a carousel. So in the product discovery, we would suggest our customers to order from the same restaurants, and that carousel drove the highest conversion rate. So you can say there is definitely an element of people go in a habit. People are like, oh, we want to order again. What do we land on? So I think there is like, oh, if you have a favorite cuisine type, you might go for that restaurants. At the same time, some people are experimental. They want to try new restaurants and they try that as well.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Anyone else? I don't see hands up, but Marta?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for the presentation. One question about the short learning cycles. Do you have any advices in terms of I want to keep the experiment short, but I also need, in a way, a supply of customers that I can interview. So how to kind of decrease the gap between the people that I want to reach out to and kind of pressing everything into maybe the 14 days or short cycles.
Yeah, that happens quite frequently, right? I think you have to define a critical number of customers. So you'd say, just to make it easier as an example, I want to reach out to 100 customers. That's my goal for the next 1 week. And then you want to have a hypothesis on your conversion rate. If I speak to those 100 customers, I want maybe 5% of them to convert and actually go to the next funnel step. So I think that's something you should phrase at the beginning, and you should do something that's ambitious, right? Like in terms of output, but obviously feasible in a certain time. If you had a bit of a team or so, it would be outbound emails or so that you can scale a bit more. But I also know from my experience, if you do, cold calling or other stuff, it just takes a time. But you will also, I think the larger your data set, the better. But you should have sort of a gut feeling of like, oh, if I only speak to 10 customers, that might not be enough, right? Because there could be fluctuation in it.
Okay. So the idea is more like preparing it in advance, having like kind of a conversion hypothesis on the conversion funnel, and then starting the experiment. Let's say I assume it will take me 2 weeks to get to that funnel, and then I start the experiment from that point onwards.
Yeah. So I would define. I think I would say, okay, I have a week or two to validate my hypothesis, and then I would create it backwards from that and say, what can I do that gives me sort of the most insight, right? And that probably defines then how many people you need to identify and talk to, and what's your smartest way to do it, right? Because there might be easy way to get there, right? Let's say you maybe go to a trade fair, you identify a trade fair, and there's lots of potential customers there, and then you just go to the trade fair the whole day and just speak to as many as possible, which might be easier than sitting there at home and trying to call someone, right? I think it's sort of being smart on that opportunity as well.
Thanks.
Sure. Any other question? Otherwise, I'll hand the floor back to Livia, so you can go ahead with the program.
So then we're right on time. Thank you so much, Fabian. It was super insightful.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Everybody's going to get the presentation also at the end. So just to let you know. Okay, let me share again.
I need to jump for another meeting soon, so I'm saying thank you for having me. So I'll drop off pretty soon. And have a good day.
Thank you, Fabian. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sorry, just a little. Okay, yeah. I while he was answering the questions, I have the books. Nada, Sean Ellis,
Nice.
Hacking Growth. This is about how to create viral loops within your marketing strategy. And Near Eyal, I really love it. This is about how to create viral loops within your product. It's really, really. I think this last one is the one from Stanford that I mentioned. But this is you have that on the presentation at the end. So that brings us to the workshop part of our presentation. So now, sorry, I think you cannot see my screen. One sec. So I'm not used to have only one screen on those presentations. Technical difficulties. Okay. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So, Okay, so now we're going to go to our workshop time. Remember that in my presentation, I was talking a little bit that startups are all risk layers, bundles of risk, and that when people evaluate how we're doing, they basically look into that. So the workshop is going to be you trying to understand your risks right now. And I'm going to give you an example on how to do that. So here, imagine that I want to tell people that I can build a cake. And they should, so I can simply say, hey, I never built a cake before. And you guys can be sure that I could do a good job. This is just, you might believe me or not believe me. And that's what a lot of people do while they're building their companies, right? They say, oh, I can build a great application and I'm just sure about it. And that's it. And then you can get to the second level that you say, oh, I'm showing you people that this is a picture of a cake that I have done. And this is even a picture of while I was making the cake. So I have proof that I have done it in the past. And then I actually, if I want to raise a little bit the level of my proof, I would show, hey, everyone, here's the friends that have tasted my old cake. You can say that it's true and is delicious. And you can definitely trust me on that cake. And then I can even go even further. I can make a cake and let you taste the cake that I have just made. And then you're going to believe that I make good cakes. And it sounds like a stupid little thing, but when we're trying to sell our business to others, that's sometimes what we're doing. So we have to really remember that when we're showing our traction in our business to potential investors and to show, we have to show is always better than telling. And the second principle is the external validation is stronger than my personal opinion. So opinion from others, from customers, testimonials, or someone that tried your is better than you selling it. Your other investors, anyone, an accelerator even. And the third point, more data is better. One thing is, if you can measure and show real tangible results and proof, this gets even stronger. So for the exercise, for the workshop, we're gonna now go into 10 minutes. The idea is that everybody's gonna go to their workshop, to their, how is it called?
Breakout rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Breakout.
It will be made automatically normally. Everybody will be.
Okay. Oh, okay. We'll be made automatically. The breakout rooms are going to be together with your own cohort. If you want, take a screenshot from the screen. It has all the. I would also ask you to get the handout. Here's the picture. You can see with your phone. You can get the link.
There is a mix in the court. Berlin will be together, Paris also, and then there is a mix between London, Madrid, and Turin, so that there is people in a group.
Okay, nice. And then how are you going to do it? So the instructions is in this handout. Read all the categories of all your risk categories, and try to rank yourself and do a very honest assessment and where you think you stand within the status. And so you mark your level in 1 to 5, use a color, and then you're going to highlight where you are really the worst. And I would ask you to create one concrete action to move one level up. So we have the tendency, we usually want to work on the things that we're a little bit better. And because that's usually what we put more pleasure on working on. But what really can make a difference is to move the needle, move our status from the ones that we're ranking the lowest, because they can make the biggest impact for us. And then after that, you're gonna reflect between each other. What are your risks that score the lowest, and what did you learn from this? And then on the last 5 minutes, you're gonna share a little bit of what one step you're gonna do to de-risk your startup this week. As usual, we needed more time.
Yeah, that's homework for the next days, right?
No, but it was really good.
Yeah.
So I hope you also enjoyed that. The main goal of this exercise was really for you to understand, like, what you should prioritize right now, and what is really your biggest risk, and to come up with one thing that you could do this week to improve it. And all the other things are distractions, because unfortunately we're small teams, and we can try to do several things at the same time. But if you commit to improve that lowest graded risk, that really means that brings you closer to a successful business. So I hope you have enjoyed the exercise. And I think that's also going to give you a lot of conversations for the coaching sessions.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to talk, especially to Shinbei. She didn't have time to present her whole thing on my group. I don't know if anyone would like to talk anything extra.
Maybe just a word for the follow-up of the launch. Thank you very much, Livia. Indeed, that was a really great session. So as you know, you all have your local activities with coaching, workshops, and etc. Regarding the EU part, we're going to meet again for a similar session on another topic related more to resources, funding, and partners. That will be on the 26th of November at lunch. And in between, the Entrepreneurship Festival is starting next week for 1 month in all campuses. So also be aware about all the open events that are organized in your local places to benefit from all the opportunities that are there. And yeah, indeed, if there's any word from Simone, Daniela, Harry, or also anyone from the cohort, we can take 2 minutes before jumping to lunch.
If just I can add, so talking even with my team here, so we see how it's difficult sometimes to give ourselves an objective, for this week, a very, very concrete number, because typically we say, I should, I think, but this week I'll do is hard, but it's the only way to improve week by week. Otherwise, you just keep stuck where you are. So that's it. Good luck, guys.
Okay, I guess we're over. Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thanks, Livia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the session. Thank you, Livia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.
See you.